Bengal tiger. Solitary, nocturnal predator. Dislikes excessive heat, so lazes in water to keep cool. Lifespan, 15 years. The African elephant, the largest and most powerful of the land mammals, lives in complex family groups, can cover 80 kilometers a day. Lifespan, about 70 years. Is the zoo really any place to keep animals such as these? Should we really be keeping wild animals in captivity just for our entertainment? What quality of life can we hope to offer them? And in reality, what life do they actually get? Space rarely, if ever, matches the animal's natural range, and more commonly is reduced instead to virtually nothing. Animals which left to themselves would roam for tens of miles a day, tread the same few paces daily. Some of the fastest animals on earth live in pens so small they could not gather pace to a trot, let alone full speed. Birds are virtually stripped of their most precious gift, flight, often able to do little more than flutter their wings. Birds of prey do not soar but perch and vegetate. Consequently, large birds like vultures and pelicans in zoos are prone to bone disease. And for 15 hours a day, many animals may be shut away in their night quarters with even less room to move. But it is not just a matter of space. It is also the quality of the environment. Wild rhinos do not restrict themselves to the same territory and may travel for 12 kilometers or more a day. For these captive rhinos, their zoo enclosure is probably about as good as it gets. But in reality, what is there for the rhinos? They are short-sighted, and so stimulation in their world relies heavily on smell. The view of the main road is probably lost on them. Reptiles need complex thermal ranges, variation in humidity, special phases of light, and other factors which may seem difficult for us to appreciate as humans. And these, our closest relatives in the animal kingdom, exchange the infinite possibilities of the forest for little more than playground climbing frames. How long would these keep a 5-year-old child amused? Hours? Certainly not days or years. And what of social interaction with their own species? The elephant, whose herd and social structure are so important, imprisoned alone. Animals which might cross the plains in vast numbers would be lucky to find companionship in double figures. Some animals may find solace, only to have their world torn apart when cage mates are sold. And the solitary and the shy, or the creatures of the night, will not spend a day away from prying eyes. Even some zoos are starting to admit that certain animals, like polar bears, simply shouldn't be there at all. This bear's companion died, leaving her alone. Her natural territory of hundreds of miles reduced to what you can see, an ice floe painted on the wall, and the rocks painted white. Little wonder she's going out of her mind. Inevitably, frustration and boredom are commonplace amongst zoo animals and lead to obsessive and repetitive behaviors in the form of pacing, swaying, even self-mutilation. This is known as stereotypic behavior, and such pointless, repetitive movements have also been noted in mentally ill people. With nothing to do, these zoo animals become psychotic. Caged animals will often pace the same path again and again, their plodding step not faltering, crushing vegetation to leave a neat track, showing the course they will walk for the rest of their lives. Great apes and elephants will rock, sway, or shift repeatedly from side to side. Other disturbed behavior may include licking the walls and chewing the bars of their pens. Abnormal behavior in reptiles may manifest itself as climbing or scratching at their glass tanks because they don't understand why they can't get out. Other reptiles may become completely sedentary, seemingly sleeping their lives away behind a rock. This animal may be trying to wait out the environment in which it is trapped, but the wait never ends. This poor gorilla is repeatedly eating his own vomit. He eats. He vomits. And he begins to eat again. What a sad, distorted view of nature zoos give us. But what of conservation? In a world where animals and habitat are threatened daily, are zoos not merely providing a refuge for many animals, and indeed safeguarding their future? Conservation has become a zoo industry buzzword, a reason to exist, a defense against any failings, and a highly effective marketing tool. In one survey, most of those questioned were concerned about the welfare of animals in zoos. However, 3/4 believed that many animals avoid extinction by being there. Over half said they would not visit a zoo if they knew that it had little impact on conservation. Let's look at the facts. In the region of 6,000 species are either threatened or endangered, yet only a handful are in captive breeding programs, and only around 20 have actually been returned to the wild with any degree of success. Out of an estimated 10,000 zoos worldwide, less than 500 register their animals on an international species database, and even in these, it is estimated that only between 5 and 10% of the space is devoted to endangered species. Most animals in zoos, including the African lions, elephants, giraffes, are not threatened. They are simply exhibits. And look at the way they keep those precious, rare species whose very future they claim to hold in their hands. These highly endangered snow leopards have never bred successfully. And these have a Big Dipper hurtling past every 4 minutes. Even if zoos were working as hard for conservation as their publicity material would have you believe, the very nature of most would doom their efforts to failure. Captive breeding projects need to be as close as possible to the ultimate release site, certainly in terms of climate, habitat and fauna. The animals need space appropriate to their needs and populations large enough to provide a suitable gene pool and a natural social balance of the species, with human contact minimized. Do zoos and safari parks meet any of the criteria necessary to make a success of their self-appointed task? Solitary or small groups of animals, often in the most unnatural of habitats, always on show to a noisy, prying public thousands of miles from where the animals belong. Animals don't need help breeding. They've been doing it successfully for a very long time. They become threatened because of a variety of environmental factors, all too often the destruction of their habitat by humans. Consequently, protection of that habitat and its animals has been shown to be the swift and cost-effective way of reversing any decline of a species. There are also dangers attached to attempts to reintroduce animals to the wild. In the wild, species build an immunity to naturally occurring disease, but in a zoo might not develop resistance to the most commonplace of ailments. Instead, they may be challenged by viruses from an animal they would never otherwise meet. Viruses can mutate or be transferred across the globe to devastate wildlife. In 1991, a lethal virus was identified in a zoo-bred tamarin just 3 days before the animal was to be released into an area where the virus was unknown. BSE, or mad cow disease, has been reported in zoo animals such as cheetah, kudu, eland, Arabian oryx, puma, and ostriches. The notion of the zoo as an ark from which the wild can occasionally be topped up is so ludicrous that it has led observers to say that zoos have put the con in conservation. Animals remain threatened or are even driven to extinction, whilst precious resources are drained away on expensive, high-profile breeding projects with no serious hope of success. The sad truth is that in many cases, zoo animals are bred simply to attract visitors and publicity, and pressure on space and resources means that some will be sold or killed at the end of the season. This safari park admits that it culls its surplus monkeys. Other monkeys have been supplied for experimentation, with some zoos openly collaborating with animal researchers or even having laboratory facilities on site. Surplus bison and ostriches have been sold to farms to be reared for their meat. Although very few animals find their way out of zoos back into the wild, the traffic is not so uncommon in the other direction. Animals are still being snatched from the wild to provide yet more zoo exhibits around the world. Some animals will spend their lives being shunted from one zoo to another, every time finding that it's no place like home. If zoos are here to protect animals, just how many more will have to be born wild just to die in captivity? Zoos claim that seeing a live wild animal gives an unparalleled appreciation of the power and wonder of nature. But what are they really showing us? The power and dignity of these animals is often stripped from them, and instead of being at one with an environment for which they have evolved, they sit in a wasteland. Giraffes, which drift gracefully above the trees in Africa, in the zoo become awkward-looking freaks in a sideshow. We have a world where the primates hide their faces, the predators never hunt, and where mothers eat their young rather than let them survive. We see lonely, solitary beasts shuffling around concrete enclosures, their eyes sad and empty. Television alone has ensured that our understanding and knowledge of these animals goes way beyond these pathetic exhibits. So many different species crammed together ensures that it is impossible to take away more than a fleeting glimpse of each. A study at a US zoo found that most visitors spend less than 3 minutes looking at each exhibit, and sometimes as little as 8 seconds. True, many of us will never see all these animals in the wild. We will have to make do with books, television, and so on. But could a few minutes of watching this ever justify the tragedy before you? Some knowledge of animals may have come from research at zoos, but it is disproportionate to the number of facilities, and most, including much of that relating to breeding and husbandry, is for the benefit of the industry rather than the animals. Although some menageries now promote themselves with friendly words like sanctuary or rescue centre, they are often self-perpetuating, buying in more animals, letting others breed, and the animals are stuck there as surely as in a zoo by any other name. So check the credentials of anywhere making such a claim. Conservation may be on every zookeeper's lips, but the reality is that the animals you see will not be going home. Ultimately, zoos and safari parks are simply here as entertainment. Some even present animals performing little more than circus tricks to keep the visitors amused. We are given to believe that we pay to see them because we love them. So don't they deserve better? Do they really deserve a life sentence for our amusement?
The Trading Post gift shop, situated on the main car park, will be closing in 25 minutes' time at 4 o'clock. Thank you.